Hello again, everyone. My name is Paul Perrello, welcoming you to another edition of the Philly Factor. Well, here we are a few years after the pandemic, and we're starting to see more and more stories of how people coped with that time where we were sort of in shutdown mode. For many of us, it was like isolation where we couldn't interact with people unless it was on a Zoom call, sort of like this. And now these stories are starting to come out about how people did cope during those years of the pandemic. One of those stories that came to my attention recently is the story of a Philadelphia teacher by the name of Ilana Volain, who managed to use her time during the pandemic to sort of reconnect with her childhood and with her childhood passion of collecting Barbie dolls. And Ilana joins us here on this edition of the Philly Factor. Thanks so much for joining us here on the program. And quite appropriately, you have your Barbie sweatshirt on and you're sitting in a room filled with Barbie dolls. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I came across your story, and I was intrigued because so many times we hear of people doing desperate things in desperate times, including the pandemic. But it seemed you used the time that we were sort of in a shutdown mode to reconnect with your childhood in some respects, because you decided to rebuild your Barbie collection during the pandemic.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was always a Barbie girl when I was a kid. And when I moved into high school, I didn't lose my passion for Barbie and I was still, collecting. And when I went to college, I got busy and then started my job and just I didn't really have time just to have this sort of hobby. And during the pandemic, I had more time just to slow down and be at home. And I just had a moment thinking, oh, I miss all my Barbies. I would love to get back into just, having at least a few of the ones that were really important to me during my childhood. And from then, I discovered groups on Instagram and Facebook for adult Barbie collectors, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And I met a group who started weekly Zoom meets, and we would just meet every Sunday afternoon and just talk about our collection and, restyle our dolls together. And we became really good friends who then later on met um, in person at Barbie convention 2 years after.
Yeah. Barbie is big bucks. I mean, this she started out in 1959 by Ruth Handler, who, as I understand it, she designed this doll for her daughter, I believe, and from 1959 it just exploded from there. In that, she's been in theme parks. She had her own movie a few years ago, which was a blockbuster. She has set the stage for young girls wanting to really explore and do things that back in 1959 maybe Ruth never really thought Barbie would be into. I mean, Barbie's been an astronaut, she's been a doctor, she's been a veterinarian. I mean, you name it, Barbie has done it. So she really, as the saying goes, really has come a long way, baby, from those early days in 1959. But the other thing that I find remarkable here, Ilana, is that ironically, you share the same birthday of March 9th as Barbie, although she's much older than you. But March 9th is Barbie's birthday and it's your birthday.
Yes, and that was another moment in my childhood that really sparked a passion for Barbie and me. I remember I think it was my fifth or sixth birthday, and I got this Barbie doll. It was Beyond Pink Barbie doll. She was like a rock star and she had a guitar. And on the back of the box, there were like three fun facts about Barbie. Like, my favorite food is pizza. I like to go shopping. Birthday March 9th. And my parents saw that and they were like, oh, we have to get this for her. So when I got her as a gift, I was just blown away. I'm like, no, we don't have the same birthday. That's not possible. And that also kind of became my icebreaker fun joke or fun fact. And yeah, that really to me was very special and that also kind of kept that connection going.
uh, when you discovered this connection with Barbie, and at a young age you started having, birthday parties, and you would get Barbie dolls for, for birthday gifts. I assume you didn't realize the importance that Barbie would have in your life so much later. So, do you still have some of those original Barbies that were given to you at a young age?
I do have a few. Um, I'm trying to think of the ones at the top of my head that I have. But yeah, I do have yes, I do actually have that Beyond Pink Barbie, the one that was in the box. And I've actually I really should get that Barbie in the box just to have because
Right.
of that memory and that spark. Um, but the majority of my Barbies, they're like repurchases of what I had
Sure.
those versions of. But yeah, I do actually have a few.
um, Having two daughters and having lived the whole Barbie experience with them, and having bought my fair share of Barbies for them, uh, I, they would rip them out of the box and they would play with them. And dare I say that one of my daughters may have actually restyled Barbie's hair with a pair of scissors, unbeknownst to me and my wife. But, you know, were you conscious of, Barbie's importance, or were you one of those kids that ripped her out of the box and played with her and changed her clothes and shoes and maybe even lost shoes along the way? Today, many of those fashions and styles and even the shoes make a Barbie even more collectible, if you will.
I, yes. So Barbie was always very special to me, and I remember treating my Barbies with care as best as I could. The few Barbies I do have from my childhood, I look at them and yeah, their hair is very much tangled. Um, and I wasn't always the best at keeping up with the brushing, but I actually kind of like sort of the texture that created in their hair in a way. Um, so I was never really malicious. I don't think any child really is, but like careless in the treatment of my dolls. Maybe once I cut their hair, but that wasn't a thing I engaged in a lot. I would change their clothes a lot. Um, the shoes going missing, yeah, the shoes just never stayed on very well, so that was always a frustration. Um, the the value, thinking about the value, I mean, I guess we all value things differently. Like for a
Sure.
child, a toy, playing with it, enjoying it, that is inherently valuable. Even as a collector, I'm, some dolls I'll keep in box. Most of my dolls I do take out of box because I feel like dolls are very much a tactile thing. There's lots of textures, designs, like embroidery, moving parts. Like you're meant to touch them, you're meant to
Sure.
style them. And I think that's very valuable. I think that's a big part of the appeal of dolls is their fashionability.
Hmm. How many Barbie dolls do you actually own then?
I don't like to count because it kind of
I was going to
frustrates
say,
me like, oh God, here we go again. But I'm going to venture to say about 500. Like, either the ones that are kind of in the basement that are just, there and I don't really play with them, and the ones that are on the shelves and the ones in the boxes. I'm gonna venture in that ballpark.
um, I suspect, because in reading a lot about not only Barbie collectors, but in general toy collectors, they're very passionate about their collections. They're very meticulous about their collections and want to make sure that their collections are kept in a pristine manner as much as possible. Do you have a room set aside at your house, besides the room that you're obviously joining us from? But are they kept? Dare I say, I'm sure there are some people that just get these dolls and in their original boxes, and then just like shove them in a storage locker somewhere, which I don't think really does any justice to the collector or to the collection itself. But I'm certain that not only you but other Barbie collectors make sure that the doll is kept as much as possible in the original boxes, especially if you're going back and recreating your collection, knowing that, well, I had that doll, and I probably made the mistake of taking it out of the box, and that depreciates the value of it. So I'm assuming in reading about you that you have maintained the collection as best as possible in rooms that are set aside as specifically for your collection.
Yes, so this is what I call like the Barbie room. However, there's Barbies all over the house. So I have like this glass display cabinet from IKEA. I have two of those downstairs in the living room. I have an open, kind of a larger open shelf in the dining room area that has dolls. I have a table next to it where I have a Barbie dream house that serves as my diorama for a lot of my photography setups. Um, I do rotating holiday displays on our buffet table of, dolls pertaining to the current holidays. So there is this, oh, and the guest room is completely Barbie themed with Barbie bedspread and framed photos and all that. So it's more or less a Barbie house, but this is the dedicated room. Um, in terms of like keeping them in their pristine condition, um, like if I do debox them and they come with accessories, I do try to bag accessories and kind of keep those to the side, even though I don't really play with them too much. I just know I have them. Um, but I'm trying to think what else.
There's like a school of
Um,
thought where some
yeah, I mean, I
collectors,
try to keep them, especially if I like a doll in the condition I bought it, like its outfit, its hair, shoes, whatever. I keep it as it is. But if some cases I'll buy the doll just because I like the doll or just because I like the outfit, and then I'll put them on a different doll. So it really depends on how I feel towards a certain doll in my collection.
yeah, because I was going to say there are like two schools of thought here. You'll find collectors of anything that will insist that that item that they're collecting, and in this case Barbie, stay in the original box in the original packaging because that increases the value of the doll. And then you will get other people that will say, well, I'm sure like Ruth Handler when she made the doll, it was made to be played with. So it's okay to take it out of the box and to play with it and to be careful with it. And if you want to put it on the shelf afterwards, that's fine. So do you find that there are really two schools of thought when it comes to Barbie collecting?
There's like the two extremes, and then I think there's a lot of um like mid-range things, kind of like what I was mentioning, how some of my dolls I do keep in box, and then a lot of them I keep out of box.
Mhm.
And I think an idea, something you're mentioning is the whole value. And I don't look at my Barbies as a retirement investment or anything like that because I don't buy them with the idea of selling them. I buy them because I want them and I want them in my collection and I'm keeping them.
Sure.
Um, Maybe there's a doll here and there that I see going around that, oh, that one's going to be valuable in the future, like the Stevie Nicks Barbie, which I got. I unboxed her. I'm playing with her. I think she's really cute, but I don't think she's super easy to find anymore. I mean, you can, but her price went up. So that's
Sure.
an example of that. But I only bought one. I could have, if I could, I could have maybe bought two and then sell. But to me, that's work. And I know there's people out there who scoop up Barbies to sell, and that's, their agenda, but it's my hobby. I don't want to make it a job. I don't want to make it work. And I feel like when you're sort of thinking in the future and ascribing potential value to things that may or may not be there yet, it's mental work, and I feel like it takes some of the enjoyment out of it.
That's a valid point, and especially given your work as a first grade teacher, there's enough work in doing that, let alone that your hobby then becomes another job. I mean, a hobby is a hobby for a reason, and your work as a first grade teacher is so valuable. So you don't want to necessarily get involved in something that's going to distract you from what your real passion or what your real job or lot in life is, and that's being a teacher. But there are those. Well, I think you would agree. There are those collectors out there that the day. I mean, I'm old enough when the Sears catalog used to come out, and all the new Barbies would be featured in the Sears catalog, and my sister at the time would pick out which Barbies she wanted for Christmas that year. There are those people that watch to see what's coming next, and there are no big toy stores left anymore, at least around here, that they would go to the toy store and stand in line to get the next Barbie that was being dropped. But there are those people that are out there that online now, if Mattel is putting out a new Barbie, they may buy more than one for the sake of the resale value that's associated with it. And you probably see that as a Barbie collector yourself, and going to some of these conventions and talking to other collectors who maybe this hobby has really become their passion, or it has become their full-time career. I mean, you probably have seen that more so than anybody else.
I think there's also a range with that too, because I think, it's like anything. I'm not gonna collect Hot Wheels just to resell them because it's not my interest. So I think
Sure.
maybe people who do resell with, I want to get an increase in value. I think part of it is also like, well, if I get a little bit of a return, then I can buy more of the dolls I want.
Right.
So yeah, I still think there's definitely range. I get there's extremes for sure, but then there's probably collectors who, sell and buy as they go because you run out of room. You can't keep everything and your interests do change. Like I'm
Sure.
finding that myself too. Like there's some dolls where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not vibing with you anymore. I need to make room. So, and yeah, with convention it's great too because a lot of collectors we do something called room shopping where collectors bring their collections that they're selling and they turn their hotel room into a shop. So you walk around the hotel just shopping people's hotel rooms and adding to your collection, and it's a lot of fun.
What's the oldest? Not to put you on the spot here, but the Barbie is more than 60 years old, so there's all those dolls that are out there. But what is the oldest doll that perhaps you own? I mean, I think everybody would give their right arm for that original 1959 Barbie. And I'm sure it may be available out there, but it's going to be quite darn expensive too, I'm sure. But what's the oldest Barbie that you own?
I'm going to guess the oldest one I own they were called Twist and Turn Barbies. I believe I have, so her head is on an original Midge body, so that body may be the oldest I have, but the twist and turn is from the 60s.
Okay,
So I got that at a flea market. So that may be the oldest I have. So what the body would be yeah, in the 60s, 1960s range. But um, if I like calling that, if I find that era in the wild, I will get it. It's not very common because I like to frequent flea markets, but I don't collect the really, really old ones just because it's not what I grew up with.
sure.
So it's not what I'm drawn to because it doesn't remind me of my childhood. I definitely appreciate it. I appreciate the fashions and the style and how it really is reflective of that time period. But again, I only have so much space. I can't collect everything, even though
Yeah.
that would be, really cool.
Now, you mentioned Midge because Midge was another doll early on after Barbie. Skipper was Barbie's sister, I believe, right? Skipper was
Yes.
Barbie's sister. Okay, so Midge was a friend. Is that what?
Yes, Midge was Barbie's first friend. I can't remember what year she was introduced. I'm gonna guess, I probably should know this. I think it was a couple years later. Wait, let's
But
see. Yeah. But Skipper's a sister, Stacy's another sister, then Kelly came around. And a lot of people don't know. I think this is her cousin, but her cousin is Scooter.
okay,
Yeah, the whole family.
Which, but where I was going with is you are specifically collecting Barbie dolls, not necessarily the sisters or the cousins or even Ken for that matter, because that's a whole other area of collecting. You're just purely a Barbie collector.
So I would actually consider myself, yes, like Barbie. I have lots of Barbie. I have like different fashion dolls too. So I collect different types of fashion dolls. Um, but if we're talking specifically about Barbie's family members, I do have a few Skippers, I have a few Kellys, I have a few Kens, but they're not the focus or of my collection. But they also, um, at least, I'm thinking back to my childhood of the 90s, early 2000s. Um, Skipper wasn't always front and center, so there aren't as many of her. Um,
Do you, I mean, I don't know. Is there a group? I mean, we think of Barbie collectors, but I don't, is there a group that is like, are there Ken collectors that are out there? You don't necessarily hear about a Ken collection or a Ken convention, although maybe with the movie from a few years ago, that has really resurrected interest in Ken, and that has, sort of given life to Ken collectors now.
So I do have a friend who he pretty much is exclusively a Ken collector, and there there was a Ken, they called it Kenvention, and there's been talk about them maybe starting that up again, so a convention just for Ken. Um so yeah, I think there's definitely people who do just collect, Kens or just male dolls. Um yeah, I mean honestly, I think for any interest, there's a collector for it.
Sure. Yeah. We just have a few minutes left, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that are interested in Barbie, and they may be interested as being, Barbie collectors. What type of advice can you give to either, anybody that's out there? Not necessarily parents who might be wanting to do this for their children, but what type of advice can you give people who might be interested in starting a collection? I mean, the tendency to say, well, I got to go all the way back to 1959 and find that original doll. Well, that's a possibility, but may be very unrealistic for people. But what type of advice can you give to people who might want to get interested in collecting Barbie?
I would say start with what truly interests you. If you see it and you go, wow, that's really special, I love it, that's what you're drawn to. And then pay attention to the aesthetic of what you're drawn to. Because I look around my Barbie room and I definitely very much know I love pastels and sparkles, and that's a lot of what's in my collection. So that's what I gravitate towards. Get what you truly love. Don't just get something to get it because it's trendy or you think, oh, it's going to increase value in a few years. Don't let that be the sole factor. Let your passion drive you and your interests and what makes you like smile and feel good.
Yeah. One final question then before I let you go. Is there ever a Barbie that was out there that you may have seen and wish that you had, or you may have gone to a convention and you said, gee, I would really like to get that. I think I'm going to come back an hour from now and get it. And you go back and it's not there. I'm sure you've had those type of experiences. So is there the one that got away?
You know what? I don't, I'm very grateful that I don't think I've had that experience yet. I almost did, but I haven't. So I remember walking into a room sale and they call them like the Holy Grail dolls, like something you're really searching for. And I saw it and I forgot about this doll, but in the back of my mind, I knew I'm like, this is a Holy Grail doll. And because I went in to shop, I didn't have a list. I didn't really actually know what I wanted. I was just looking for that, the things that bring me joy and happiness. And I saw this doll and I'm like, that's it. And I bought it right on the spot because I knew there weren't many of them made. And the woman selling her wasn't even that familiar with this doll. And I'm like, if I don't buy this doll now, I'll regret it. And it was a good price too. So that was an instance of if I didn't act on that moment, that would have been the doll that got away.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a fascinating half hour about all things Barbie. And I wish you continued success as a teacher in the Philadelphia school system, as well
Thank
as with
you.
your Barbie collection. And thanks so much for being with us here on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us here on the Philly Factor. We'll catch you the next time around.